My forbidden love tore my life apart, and now I'm stuck between two men who hate each other. Let me tell you about the most chaotic, heart-wrenching love triangle you'll ever hear. I can't reveal our real names, but for the sake of the storytelling, my name is Zara, 30 to female, and I've spent most of my adult life trapped between two men. Leo, the love of my life, and Amir, the man I was forced to marry. It's been over a decade, but the echoes of that forbidden love still haunt me. I was 18 when I first met Leo. I had just moved to Canada to live with my uncle after my parents passed away in a tragic accident. My uncle was a strict, traditional man who believed in upholding every aspect of our Moroccan heritage, no matter how far from home we were. I had always walked the line between respecting my culture and longing for freedom, but moving to a new country only heightened my desire to live life on my own terms. One evening, my cousin invited me to a party. It was one of those beachside, sunlit gatherings where everyone looked like they belonged in a fashion magazine. I felt out of place in my modest dress, but that's when I saw him, Leo. Tall, golden-skinned, with that mischievous smile that made you feel like he saw right through you. He was magnetic. We talked for hours that night, completely ignoring everyone else around us. He told me about his dream of traveling the world, playing guitar, and escaping the shadow of his controlling family's massive business empire. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years, and for the first time since losing my parents, I felt alive. Leo and I started seeing each other in secret. Every stolen glance, every whispered word, every touch set my heart on fire. But I knew deep down that my uncle would never approve. Leo wasn't from our culture. He wasn't serious enough, and he wasn't a man my uncle would deem worthy of my hand in marriage. It didn't take long for my uncle to catch wind of our secret meetings. He was furious. One night, he called me into his study, his face dark with anger. "You've dishonored this family with your reckless behavior," he spat, his voice trembling with both rage and disappointment. I felt my stomach churn as he placed an ultimatum before me: end things with Leo or be sent back to Morocco to marry a man of his choosing. "You think this fling is worth ruining your family's reputation?" he hissed, slamming his fist onto his desk. "Your parents would be ashamed." I was devastated. I couldn't imagine a life without Leo, but the thought of being sent away, of losing my dreams of independence and the fragile sense of belonging I had in Canada, terrified me. My uncle's decision felt final, like a door slamming shut on the life I wanted. I tried to reason with him, tears streaming down my face. "Please, uncle," I begged. "I love him. Can't you just give us a chance?" "Love?" He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Love doesn't put food on the table or protect a family's name. You are young and foolish, Zara. You'll thank me someday." When I told Leo about the ultimatum, he was livid. His eyes burned with frustration and heartbreak as he paced back and forth, his hands running through his hair. "Come with me," he said, grabbing my hands with a desperate intensity. "We'll leave everything behind. We'll build a life together, just us. I'll take care of you, Zara. You don't need them." It was tempting, God. It was tempting, but I couldn't do it. The weight of leaving my family, my culture, and the memory of my parents behind was too heavy. Leaving meant severing all ties with the only people I had left in the world, no matter how suffocating they could be. My heart broke as I told Leo I couldn't go with him. His face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. "So that's it then?" he asked, his voice raw. "You're choosing them over us?" I couldn't bring myself to respond. I just stood there, silent, as the love of my life walked away. That night, I felt like a part of me had died. The dreams we had built together, the future we had imagined, it all crumbled into ashes. A few months later, my uncle introduced me to Amir. He was a family friend's son who had recently moved to Canada to manage a chain of luxury hotels. Amir was everything Leo wasn't: serious, ambitious, and deeply rooted in our shared culture. He was polite, respectful, and clearly eager to please my family. My uncle adored him. From the moment Amir laid eyes on me, I could sense his admiration. He was captivated, his gaze lingering on me as though I were the center of his universe. Unlike the fiery, reckless passion I'd shared with Leo, Amir's interest in me was gentle, almost reverent. He listened intently when I spoke, remembered the smallest details about me, and went out of his way to make me feel valued. For him, I wasn't just a potential wife, I was the woman he wanted to devote his life to. Amir later confessed that he had fallen in love with me the moment he saw me. He described how, at our first meeting, he was struck by the quiet strength in my eyes and the way my laughter lit up the room. I knew right then, Zara, he told me one evening, his voice thick with emotion, that I would do anything to make you happy. Anything. Amir envisioned a life where he could be the husband I deserved, the protector of my dreams, and the builder of a future where I'd want for nothing. He painted pictures of a partnership grounded in mutual respect, trust, and unwavering support. He wasn't just offering me stability, he was offering me his heart, whole and unguarded. And yet, while his affection was undeniable, my own heart remained tangled in memories of Leo. Amir's love was a steady flame, warm and dependable, but I yearned for the wildfire Leo had ignited in me. Still, Amir's kindness was difficult to ignore. He treated me with such care, as though I were something precious and fragile. It was clear he believed he could give me a good life, and a part of me wanted to believe it too. Amir wasn't a bad man. He was kind in his own way, and he genuinely tried to make me happy. But there was no passion between us, no spark. Every time he touched me, I thought of Leo. Every time he smiled at me, I felt the weight of the life I could have had. 2 years into my marriage, I ran into Leo at a business gala Amir had dragged me to. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd traded his laid-back beach vibes for a tailored suit, his guitar for a briefcase. He was working for his family's company now, and he looked every bit the powerful, successful man Amir prided himself on being. The moment our eyes met, it was like no time had passed. My heart raced, and I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. Leo's expression was unreadable, but there was something in his gaze that told me he hadn't forgotten. Later that night, he cornered me in the hallway. "Zara," he whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. "Why did you do it? Why did you marry him?" I couldn't answer. I just stood there, trembling, as he searched my face for answers I couldn't give. Before I could say anything, Amir appeared, his arm possessively slipping around my waist. The tension between the two men was palpable. From that night on, everything changed. Leo started showing up everywhere. Amir took me, charity events, business dinners, even casual gatherings. It was as if he was haunting me, reminding me of everything I'd lost. Leo's presence became impossible to ignore. Every time he looked at me, it felt like he was peeling away the layers of the life I had constructed. Amir, ever perceptive, began to notice the shift. His easygoing demeanor turned brittle, his affection laced with suspicion. One night, after a particularly tense dinner where Leo had once again been invited by mutual acquaintances, Amir confronted me. "Zara," he said, his voice steady but cold, "what is going on between you and Leo?" I hesitated, my silence betraying me. Amir's face darkened, his jaw tightening as the realization hit him. "You still love him, don't you?" he asked, his voice breaking. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "I don't know how to stop." For the first time, Amir raised his voice. "Do you think this is fair to me, to our marriage? I gave you everything, Zara, and yet, here you are, pining for a man who walked away from you." His words cut deep, but they also forced me to confront the truth I had been avoiding. I had built a life on compromises, on trying to please everyone but myself. And now, it was crumbling beneath me. A few weeks later, Leo asked to meet me one last time. He chose the quiet beach where we had shared our first kiss all those years ago. I hesitated before agreeing, knowing that meeting him could change everything. My heart raced as I arrived, the familiar scent of salt and sand stirring up a tidal wave of memories. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, as if the universe itself mourned what was about to unfold. Leo was already there, standing barefoot in the sand, his hands shoved into the pockets of his jeans. He turned when he heard my footsteps, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. His eyes were tired, but they held that same spark I had fallen in love with years ago, a spark that had refused to fade despite everything we had endured. "I didn't think you'd come," he said quietly, his voice carrying a mix of hope and resignation. "I almost didn't," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. We stood in silence, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filling the space between us. Finally, he spoke, his tone heavier than I had ever heard it before. "I've been trying to move on, Zara," he said, his words laced with pain. "God knows I've tried, but every time I see you, every time I hear your name, it's like the past comes rushing back. I can't escape it." I still love you. I always will. But I can't keep living in the shadow of a dream that will never come true. His words hit me like a tidal wave, crashing against the fragile walls I had built around my heart. Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at him, his face a portrait of agony and love. I never stopped loving you, Leo, I confessed, my voice trembling. But I've been too scared to admit it to you, to myself. I thought I could bury those feelings, move on, and create a life that made sense. But all I've done is hurt everyone around me. Leo stepped closer, his gaze piercing through me. Then why? Zara, why did you choose this life? Why did you choose him? I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. How could I explain the weight of cultural expectations, family obligations, and my own paralyzing fear? How could I tell him that every decision I had made was a desperate attempt to hold on to a sense of belonging, even as it tore me apart? I don't know, I finally whispered, the words tasting like ash. I thought I was doing the right thing. For my family, for Amir, for myself. But now, I don't know anything anymore. Leo's expression softened, the anger in his eyes replaced by a deep sadness. You're the only woman I've ever loved, Zara, he said, his voice breaking. But I can't keep doing this to myself. I need to let you go. And if you can't choose me, then I need you to let me go too. The raw vulnerability in his words broke something inside me. I realized then that by clinging to the past, I wasn't just hurting myself, I was hurting both Leo and Amir, two men who loved me in their own ways. It was time to stop running, to stop hiding. I had to make a choice not for them, but for myself. When I returned home that night, Amir was waiting for me in the living room. He looked up from the book in his hands, his expression calm but guarded. I hesitated in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest. Amir, I began, my voice cracking. We need to talk. He set the book down and gestured for me to sit, his eyes scanning my face with concern. What's wrong? He asked, though I could tell he already knew. I sat across from him, my hands trembling as I struggled to find the right words. I need to be honest with you, I said, tears streaming down my face. From the moment we met, I've tried to be the wife you deserve. I've tried to love you the way you love me. But the truth is, I've been living a lie. My heart, it's always belonged to someone else. Amir's face remained stoic, but I could see the pain in his eyes. Leo, he said quietly, his voice devoid of surprise. I nodded, my throat tight. You deserve someone who loves you with their whole heart, I said, my voice trembling. And I can't give you that. I thought I could, but I was wrong. Staying with you would only be cruel to you, to me, to both of us. Amir was silent for what felt like an eternity, his gaze fixed on the floor. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with heartbreak and understanding. I knew, he admitted softly, I knew from the beginning that your heart wasn't fully mine. But I thought, maybe with time, things would change, that I could make you happy. Tears streamed down my face as I shook my head. You did make me happy, Amir, in so many ways. But happiness isn't the same as love, and you deserve more than half of my heart. Amir's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might lash out. But then he sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I want you to be happy, Zara, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Even if it's not with me. His words broke me. I reached out to touch his hand, but he pulled away, the gesture subtle but cutting. You should go, he said, his tone firm but not unkind. Take some time to figure out what you want, and when you do, I hope you find peace. I left that night, my heart heavy with both relief and sorrow. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Choosing Leo meant rebuilding a love that had been shattered by years of pain and separation. It meant defying expectations, facing judgment, and carving out a life that was truly my own. But for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope, a chance to reclaim the life I had lost and the love I had fought so hard to bury. As I walked away from the home I had shared with Amir, the weight of my decision settled over me. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I was finally ready to fight for my happiness, no matter the cost. The divorce was amicable, though painful. Amir and I parted on good terms, and I will always be grateful for his kindness and patience. As for Leo, we decided to take things slow. The years had changed us, and we needed to rediscover who we were both as individuals and together. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. In the end, this wasn't just a story about love. It was a story about learning to be honest with myself, about finding the courage to let go of expectations and live life on my own terms. I'm not sure where the future will take me, but for the first time in years, I feel free. And that, more than anything, feels like love.